What if I told you that the one ingredient every angler swears by for winter fishing is actually the reason you're not getting any bites? Seriously. Today we're talking about bloodworms. Specifically, we're going to tear apart the old wisdom that says you should be cramming them into your groundbait. I'm going to argue that it might just be the single biggest mistake you can make on the ice or a cold bank. By the end of this video, you'll understand the simple science behind why this magic bait can turn your fishing spot into a dead zone and what you should be doing instead. This isn't just a theory, it's something I've seen happen time and time again, leaving other fishermen scratching their heads while my rod is bending. So before we dive in, let me ask you a straight question. Is a handful of bloodworms the first thing you reach for when mixing your winter ground bait? Be honest and let me know in the comments. For as long as any of us have been fishing, the rule has been simple. When the water gets cold, you use bloodworms. It's the law. Your granddad did it, your dad did it, and every fishing magazine for the last 50 years has told you to do it. The logic seems bulletproof, right? Fish are cold, their metabolism is slow, so you need to give them something they absolutely cannot resist. A high-protein, wriggling, natural food source that smells like a 5-star meal to a bream or a roach. So we spend our hard-earned money on big portions of live bloodworms, dump them into our expensive ground bait and toss it all in the water, expecting magic to happen. We've been conditioned to believe this is the only way, the surefire path to success. But today, we're going to question that dogma. We're going to look at why this can't-fail method fails more often than it works. First, let's get into the mind of a winter fish. Picture a big bream or a perch suspended in near-freezing water. Its entire world has slowed down. Its metabolism is in low gear, just ticking over to conserve energy. It's not actively hunting for a massive meal. It's an opportunist waiting for the easiest possible calorie with the least amount of effort. Now you come along and dump a big ball of ground bait packed with hundreds of bloodworms right on its head. You think you're ringing the dinner bell, but what you're actually doing is creating a puzzle, a chore. The fish doesn't see one easy meal, it sees a confusing cloud of dirt and 100 tiny wiggling snacks that it has to sift through. This is the fundamental misunderstanding. We fish with our warm-blooded, high-energy mindset, assuming fish think the same way. In the winter, they absolutely do not. They are energy-saving machines, and our generous offering is often just too much work for too little reward. Now let's talk about the all-you-can-eat buffet problem. Imagine you go to a restaurant, and instead of ordering a steak, the waiter just dumps an entire cow on your table. That's essentially what we're doing with bloodworms in ground bait. Fish in cold water get full incredibly fast. Their digestive systems are slow, and they don't need much to feel satisfied. A bream might only need to eat 5 or 6 bloodworms to feel completely full for hours. So when your ground bait ball breaks up on the bottom, it releases a feast. The first fish to arrive quickly eats its fill from the free offerings lying in the silt and then simply stops feeding. It's no longer interested in your hook bait because it's already full. You've successfully fed the fish, but you haven't caught it. You've turned your swim into a fish cafeteria where they eat and leave without ever paying the bill, which in our case is getting caught on our hook. It's a subtle but critical distinction. Are you attracting fish or are you just feeding them? Let's visualize the scene on the bottom of the lake. Imagine you're a fish. From a distance, you detect the scent cloud of the ground bait. This is good. This is what attracts you. So you swim over to investigate. When you arrive, you find a pile of ground bait particles on the bottom. Buried within that pile are dozens, maybe hundreds, of wriggling bloodworms. Now, over to the side, just a few inches away, is a single bloodworm, or maybe 2, threaded onto a tiny hook. Which is more likely to get eaten first? The fish will naturally start picking off the easiest, most obvious free meals. It will nudge the ground bait, sucking in a free worm here, another one there. Your hook bait is just one option among 100, and it's the only one with a dangerous piece of metal attached. You have created a scenario where your hook bait has to compete with an overwhelming number of identical, safer alternatives. You've stacked the odds against yourself from the very beginning. Here's where the idea of rapid satiation really comes into play. Satiation is just a fancy word for getting full. A fish's stomach in the winter is not the bottomless pit it might be in the summer. Let's say a decent-sized roach needs only 10 bloodworms to be full. Your first catapult pouch of groundbait might contain 100, so the first 10 roach that show up can eat their fill without ever seeing your hook, or a single bream can graze for a few minutes and be done for the day. This is especially true for the bigger, wiser fish we're often targeting. They are cautious, they'll hang back and watch the smaller, more aggressive fish dart in and out of the groundbait cloud. By the time the big fish feels it's safe to move in, the initial feeding frenzy is over, the smaller fish are full, and your hookbait is just sitting there, ignored. The window of opportunity to catch that fish when it's actively looking for food is incredibly short, and you've closed it by giving them too much food too quickly. Think about the purpose of groundbait versus the purpose of bait. Groundbait is the advertisement, it's the scent trail, the visual cloud, the billboard that says, hey, good food over here. It's designed to draw fish in from a distance. The bait on your hook is the product you're trying to sell them. When you load your advertisement with the actual product, you devalue the one you're trying to sell. It's like a car dealership holding a promotion where they give away 100 free cars to attract people and then trying to sell you the 101st car. It makes no sense. The scent trail should lead to one and only one irresistible offer, your hook bait. By packing the ground bait with bloodworms, you're creating a food pile at the end of the scent trail. The fish follows the smell, arrives, finds the food pile, eats, and leaves. The system is broken. The advertisement led them right to the free samples, and they never even looked at the main product. Let me paint you a picture of a scene I've witnessed more times than I can count. Two anglers are fishing maybe 20 yards apart on a cold, still day. The guy on the left is using what he calls his killer mix, a dark ground bait absolutely loaded with live bloodworms. He's feeding it consistently, confident he's laying down a carpet of food. The guy on the right is using the exact same ground bait, but with one difference. He has added 0 bloodworms to the mix. Instead, he's just feeding the plain ground bait and fishing a single bloodworm on the hook over the top. For the first hour, nothing happens. Then the guy on the right gets a bite. Then another. The guy on the left, with all the good stuff in his swim, is motionless. He's convinced the fish just aren't there, but they are. They're in the other guy's swim, attracted by the scent, but not overfed, finding only one easy meal to take, the one on the hook. This isn't a fluke, it's a demonstration of a principle. Another major issue is the competition factor, but not in the way you think. When you put a rich patch of food on the bottom, who do you think gets there first? It's rarely the big, cautious 20-year-old bream. It's the small, dumb, aggressive fish, the tiny roach, the little perch, the gudgeon. They swarm the ground bait, pecking away at the bloodworms, creating a flurry of activity. This commotion can often spook the larger, more desirable fish that you're actually trying to catch. A big, wary fish sees that chaos and thinks danger or too much competition. It will hang back on the edge of the swim, waiting for things to calm down. By the time they do, the food is gone, the scent is dissipating, and the opportunity is lost. You've created the perfect environment for catching nuisance fish while actively discouraging the fish you came for. The very ingredient you thought would attract the big ones is actually creating a barrier that keeps them away. Let's re-examine the true purpose of ground bait in the winter. Its job is not to be a food source. Its job is to be a carrier system. A carrier for what? For scent and for fine suspended particles. A good winter ground bait should be relatively inert, meaning it doesn't have a high food value on its own. It should be dark to blend in with the bottom, and it should be mixed so that it creates a lingering, hazy cloud in the water when it breaks down. This cloud is what holds fish in your swim. They swim through it, their gills filter the particles, and it stimulates their feeding response without actually filling their stomachs. It keeps them searching, looking for the source of the attractive smell. That source should be your hook bait. By adding heavy, static food items like bloodworms, you destroy this effect. The ground bait becomes heavy, it breaks down into inert lumps, and it fails to create that crucial, enticing particle cloud. Now let's talk about the activation of your mix. A great ground bait mix has active particles. Things like crushed hemp will rise and fall in the water column, creating movement and attracting attention. When you add a large quantity of wet, clumpy bloodworms, you can effectively kill this activation. The bloodworms add weight and moisture, often making the mix sticky and claggy. Instead of breaking apart into a beautiful expanding cloud, it can sometimes just sit on the bottom in a tight ball. You've effectively neutralized the active ingredients you paid for. Think of it like adding rocks to a cake mix. It ruins the texture and stops it from rising. The mechanics of your ground bait are just as important as the ingredients, and adding a big handful of bloodworms is often the fastest way to ruin those mechanics, turning a light, active mix into a dead, heavy lump on the lake bed. So if adding whole bloodworms is the problem, is there an alternative? Absolutely. And it's all about the juice. The most attractive part of the bloodworm is not the worm itself, but the scent and the amino acids it releases. And this is what fish can detect from a long way off. So instead of adding whole worms, consider using their extract. You can buy liquid additives, or you can make your own. Take a small amount of bloodworms, put them in a blender with a little water, or just mash them up thoroughly. Then use this liquid to mix your ground bait. Now you have the best of both worlds. You get that powerful, irresistible scent infused into every particle of your mix, creating a massive scent cloud that draws fish in. But you are not giving them a food source. They arrive full of hunger and find nothing to eat except for that one perfect little morsel you've placed on your hook. This is how you use the power of the bloodworm without falling into the trap. Let's revisit the psychology of a winter fish. It's lazy, it's an opportunist, does not want to work for its food. It will not actively dig through a pile of dirt to find a meal unless it's absolutely starving. When you use a ground bait heavy with bloodworms, you are asking the fish to do just that. You are asking it to root around, to sift through particles, to expend energy it's trying to conserve. A fish is much more likely to take a bait that is presented perfectly, sitting just on top of the silt, or slowly sinking through the water column. When your hook bait is surrounded by hundreds of free bloodworms that are partially buried in the ground bait on the bottom, you've made your hook bait the more difficult option. It's counterintuitive, but by making food harder to get, you've made your swim less attractive to the lazy, energy-conserving fish you want to catch. The goal is to present the easiest possible meal, and a single hook bait in a cloud of scent is much easier than a single hook bait in a pile of food. The particle cloud effect is something the best anglers understand deeply. It's about creating a presence in the water that goes beyond a simple pile of food, the bottom. When you mix your ground bait correctly, not too wet, not too dry, it should almost fizz as it breaks down, sending tiny particles up into the water column. These suspended particles catch the light and the current, and they hang in the water for a long time. This is what stops a cruising fish and holds it in your area. The fish becomes curious, trying to find the source of these particles. It keeps them engaged and searching. When your ground bait is just a heavy, food-laden ball, you get none of this effect. It sinks like a stone and sits there. You might attract the fish that are directly on the bottom, but you miss all the fish that are suspended just off the bottom, which is very common in winter. A light, active, particle-rich mix without heavy food items will always outperform a dense, food-heavy one in cold water. We've touched on this, but the hook bait dilemma deserves its own focus. Your success for the entire day hinges on one thing: a fish picking up your hook bait. Every decision you make should be geared towards maximizing the chances of that happening. When you introduce hundreds of identical freebies into the immediate vicinity of your hook, you are mathematically destroying your own odds. If there are 101 bloodworms in a 1 square foot area, and only one of them is on your hook, your odds are, at best, 100 to 1. And that's not even accounting for the fact that your hook bait looks and feels slightly different due to the hook and line. You're trying to win the lottery after printing 100 free tickets for everyone else. It's a losing game. The goal should be to make your hookbait the only food option available in a cloud of pure attraction. Then your odds become 1-to-1. Here is a simple experiment you can try yourself, especially if you're ice fishing, where you can control the variables perfectly. Drill 2 holes about 15 feet apart. In hole number 1, introduce a couple of small balls of groundbait loaded with bloodworms. In hole number 2, use the exact same amount of the same groundbait, but with 0 bloodworms mixed in. Fish both holes with a single bloodworm on the hook. I am willing to bet a lot of money that over the course of a day you will get significantly more bites, and likely better quality fish from hole number 2, the one without the free food. You have to see it to believe it. It feels wrong to not put the bait in the feed, but the results often speak for themselves. You're not there to run a charity kitchen for fish, you're there to catch them. This simple side-by-side test will prove the principle more effectively than any words I can say. We need to debunk the more is more mentality in winter fishing. It's a summer mindset that we incorrectly carry over into the cold months. In the summer, when fish are active and competing aggressively for food, a big bed of bait can be a great strategy to hold large shoals of fish. But winter is a game of subtraction, not addition. It's about finesse, delicacy, and precision. It's about whispering, not shouting. A huge pile of rich food is shouting. A small, subtle cloud of scent with a single, perfectly presented bait is a whisper. The biggest mistake anglers make in the winter is overfeeding, and the easiest and most common way to overfeed is by adding high-protein food items like bloodworms into the groundbait. Sometimes the best thing you can do is feed far, far less than you think you need. Your catch rate will often go up in inverse proportion to the amount of feed you put in. Let's not forget the simple cost factor. Good quality bloodworms are not cheap. They are one of the most expensive live baits you can buy. Many anglers will buy a large portion and put 80% of it directly into their groundbait mix, effectively just throwing that money straight into the lake. Imagine taking an $8 bill out of a $10 bill and just tossing it in the water. That's the financial reality of what you're doing. If you adopt the strategy of using the bloodworm's juice or liquid for attraction and save the whole worms exclusively for the hook, a small portion of bloodworms will last you all day, or even multiple sessions. You'll not only save a significant amount of money over the course of a winter season, but as we've been discussing, you will almost certainly increase your catch rate as well. It's one of those rare situations in fishing where spending less actually gets you more. We should also consider the state of the bloodworm itself. Are you adding live wriggling worms or dead ones? Makes a huge difference. Live bloodworms will try to burrow into the soft silt on the bottom as soon as they are released from the groundbait. Within minutes, they can become completely inaccessible to the fish, but their scent remains. So now you have an even worse situation. The fish are attracted to an area, they smell food, but they can't find it. This can lead to frustration and cause them to leave the area. Dead bloodworms, on the other hand, don't burrow, but they also don't provide the attractive movement. And if you've crushed them, they release all their scent immediately, which then dissipates rather than providing a slow, steady release. Neither situation is optimal. The goal isn't to create a puzzle or a fleeting scent. The goal is to create a sustained area of attraction that leads the fish to one and only one available food item, your hook bait. Let's circle back to the pure mechanics of the groundbait mix. A well-made mix is a delicate balance of binding and breakdown. You want it to be sticky enough to form a ball that you can throw or catapult accurately, but you want it to break apart almost on impact with the bottom. Adding a large quantity of bloodworms, which are mostly water, can completely throw off this balance. It often makes the mix overly wet and sticky. This creates cannonballs that sink to the bottom and may not break down for a very long time, trapping all the scent and attraction inside. You've essentially created a time-release bait ball that might not start working until an hour after you've put it in. Fishing is about control and precision. You want to control when and how your bait is presented. By adding a big, unpredictable variable like a handful of bloodworms, you are losing that control over your mix's physical properties. Now here's the tricky part, the thing that keeps this myth alive. It's what I call the wait and see trap. An angler puts in a ball of groundbait packed with bloodworms and maybe 20 minutes later, he gets a bite. He thinks, aha, it's working. But what he doesn't realize is that he could have gotten that same bite, or maybe even 5 bites, in that same time period if he hadn't put all that free food in. He attributes his single bite to the method, not realizing the method is what's preventing him from getting more bites. He has conditioned himself to accept a low catch rate because he believes he's using the best bait. It's a classic case of confirmation bias. Because the method doesn't always fail completely, you might still catch a fish or two, people believe it's the right way. They never stop to consider how many more fish they could have caught by doing things differently. They're catching fish in spite of their method, not because of it. So what is the big paradigm shift here? It's simple. Stop thinking of groundbait as fish food. Start thinking of it as a delivery system for scent and attraction. The real secret weapon is not the bloodworm itself, but the signal it sends out. Your job as an angler is to create the strongest, most appealing signal with the minimum amount of actual food. Use groundbait mixed with bloodworm liquid or other attractants to create a scent-rich, visually cloudy area. Then present a single, perfect hook bait right in the middle of it all. This makes your hook bait the obvious, easy, and only meal available. You are concentrating all of the fish's feeding instincts onto the one thing you want them to eat. This is the change that will take your winter fishing from a game of chance and frustration to a game of strategy and success. It's a small change in your mix, but it's a massive change in your fundamental approach. So let's put it all together. We've seen how a fish's slow metabolism in winter turns a bloodworm-packed groundbait from an attractant into an all-you-can-eat buffet that fills them up instantly and makes them ignore your hook. We've talked about how it creates competition from small fish and ruins the mechanics of your mix. The real aha moment, the big takeaway, is realizing that your groundbait's job isn't to feed the fish, but to signal them. By adding whole bloodworms, you're short-circuiting that entire process. You're killing the signal and just dumping a pile of food they can't be bothered to compete for. This simple shift in thinking from feeding to attracting can be the difference between a blank day and your best winter session ever. It's about making your single hook bait the most appealing thing in the water, not hiding it in a sea of free meals. Thank you for sticking with me through this one. If this just blew a hole in your winter fishing strategy, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe for more tips that go against the grain. And now I really want to know, after hearing all this, are you going to change how you use bloodworms this winter? Or are you sticking to the old ways? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. Let's get a real debate going.